It's becoming more clear this offseason. Duke put together a great roster going into the upcoming season. Their counterparts, though, in the North Carolina Triangle, maybe not so much. A lot of distance between Duke and their rivals.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us today on Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, we'll take a look at one of the recent CBS sports stories grading the winners and losers of the ACC and the distance that Duke might be creating against our counterparts in North Carolina. Always fun to talk Duke basketball, maybe take a jab or two at the Wolfpack and Tar Heels along the way as well. Kevin Connelly is going to be here with us for the journey today. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. You can also watch us each and every day on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends as we're continuing to grow our channel here and super excited to have you guys along the way with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils, and we're on Instagram and TikTok as well. You can find us by simply searching Locked On Blue Devils. Proudly a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Kevin Connelly, Ball Durham, is here with us again, ready to talk Duke basketball and what they've been able to do this offseason. The calendar, Kevin, all of a sudden, it's turned to September. We've seen week one of the college football season, and now we've got a chance to talk Duke basketball because it'll be here before we know it.
It's kind of crazy, right, JJ? Like all of a sudden, one time we're in the middle of June and July, and we're begging for basketball season to get closer, and now you wake up and it's September, and you have that fall crisp in the air, and official practice is 3 weeks away. So yeah, it's exciting times.
We know now all the dates for the non-conference games. We're getting updates in the recruiting world. We're seeing former Duke Blue Devils back on campus for Pro Devil Weekend that just happened with Duke basketball. So everything's right in the world. We're getting closer. It'll be here before we know it. So I really enjoyed this story that CBS put together, kind of looking at winners and losers of the offseason so far, and Duke labeled as a winner. I think you got to agree when you look at what Duke did. Once again, the number one recruiting class in the country, one of only a few schools that did not have any scholarship player enter the transfer portal, and 5 players from a Final Four squad said, I want to come back. I want to run it back. A great offseason when you look at that in totality.
No, 100%. I don't think you can make any significant complaints with how Duke was able to fill in the blanks this offseason. When you're losing so much talent and so much firepower and the number one overall pick in the NBA draft, not a lot of programs can replace that on paper the way Duke has, and especially doing it with a potential another number one overall pick in Cameron Boozer to replace a guy like Cooper Flagg. How will it all come to fruition on the court? I still think that obviously has remained to be seen. A lot of people are very excited about the potential that this Duke team has. But certainly the way the pieces have fallen into place, I don't think you can make too many complaints about how the roster stands at this very moment.
And maybe this would have been the time to do that as Shire gets ready for year 4 as the head coach. This offseason, let's not forget, there's also turnover that's taken place on this Duke coaching staff. With Jay Lucas getting the job to be Miami's head coach, more guys now have come into the fold to join the squad. Will Avery not going to be an assistant coach again this season? Justin Robinson is headed off to join the Lakers staff in the NBA. And yet it still feels like things are still on course. New hires have been brought in. The jury is still out on the outside. I know Duke fans and you and I are really excited about the staff that Shire's kind of been put together. But all of that would lead to what you would think would be a little bit more chaotic. And yet here we go. Once again, Duke basketball, steady as they come, and they just so happen to be steady at the very top of the basketball world.
Yeah, when you look at the coaching staff changes, I think it's a little bit interesting because I don't think the Jay Lucas part of it really comes into play just because, that played out in February, and you knew he was going to Miami. And I think, if anything, it could have been more of a distraction in the season because his final game on the bench was the final regular season game, didn't coach in the postseason, and that really didn't have an impact on Duke. And how they played in the postseason, winning the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg, and even in that loss to Houston in the Final Four. Like, I'm not going to say if Jay Lucas is on the bench, Duke wins. Like, Duke should have won that game, whether Jay Lucas was on the bench or whether he was down in Miami getting his team ready and his program up to speed. The other two, Will Avery, I would imagine that was probably seen coming down the pike from John Shire. I think that Justin Robinson probably surprised a lot of people, not necessarily talking about in the program, but just on the outside world, how it was underreported and nobody realized it until the first Summer League game where it was like, hey, there's Justin Robinson on the bench with the Lakers, and Lakers.
You were quick to point that out. Yeah.
And a clipboard. It's like, hey, what's going on here? And then like a half hour later, Duke put out a social media post saying that, he was on the Lakers coaching staff. So, but then when you look at the fact, like, he wasn't an assistant coach, he was, what was his
player
official
development
title? I was going to say director of player personnel or player development or something like that. So like, I don't think that's on paper as big of a loss as maybe people make it out to be. I know we talked about Jace McCain. Obviously, it looks like he still has a role with this program in some capacity or another as a GA or in a similar type role, although it hasn't been formally publicized yet. So I think John Shire did a really good job at bringing in assistant coaches. Chris Carrawell stays on staff. Emmanuel Dildy gets promoted. And then you bring a guy in who has NBA experience and a guy like Evan Brad. So I think Duke has done a really good job, not just with their player additions, but also their coaching additions this offseason.
And in general, separating themselves from their North Carolina counterparts in the ACC. When you look at Duke and then NC State and the North Carolina Tar Heels, Wake Forest, shout out to them. Not a big threat right now to Duke with everything going on.
Yes, I agree. Obviously, with the North Carolina part, Duke has had the upper hand over the past couple of years in the matchups between the two teams, sweeping this year, obviously, in the 3 games. NC State, though, is where it's like, yes, don't get me wrong. Duke has been the more consistent and the better team throughout the course of a season. But, like, I still think the Pack have a little bit of an upper hand, at least right now, maybe in terms of the bragging rights, just because of the ACC tournament win from 2 years ago, the Elite 8 win as well. And then also when you look at the fact now, that was a different regime of NC State basketball. Now with Will Wade and kind of the talent that he's put together in his first offseason, and if you know anything about Will Wade and how he wins and how he's going to get talent, I don't think it's going to be too long before we're talking about NC State as a top 5 team in the ACC, just because I respect Will Wade that much and what he can do with his team on a basketball court.
Kevin, I was hopeful that we wouldn't have to bring up the 2024 Elite 8 matchup with NC State, but we did. I do want to keep talking about this, though. A good thought there with where Duke is in comparison to their North Carolina counterparts within the ACC. We're back to that here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe even tried them, but you're looking for something beyond the usual pill. It's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked for you, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege, RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege. Promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Rugiet is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Our show here today is also brought to you by our friends at Supply House. When your opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. The Part Finder tool and 3D schematics can help save hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks are awesome too. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Supply House is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, forward we go. Kevin Connelly's here from Ball Durham talking about Duke basketball, winners and losers of the offseason, a story put together by Kyle Boone of CBS Sports. As you look at this, in the story, he points out that Duke has finished higher in the ACC standings than both North Carolina and NC State in 4 of the last 6 seasons, including a stunning 19-1 run in league play last year. A strong offseason seemingly helped it further the gap between the other 2 schools in the triangle. UNC, meanwhile, isn't the clear number 2 in its own conference thanks to Louisville's reemergence, and NC State is bound to endure some growing pains in Will Wade's first season. That all from the story there from Kyle Boone with CBS Sports. Yes, Will Wade, home run hire, done great work already in the transfer portal, but you got to think, Kevin, maybe it will take a little bit of time for all these pieces to come together and for them to quickly be at the top.
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily expect NC State to be like in the top 3 this season. But like if you told me they were going to be anywhere between the top 5 to top 7, I certainly would believe you, and I wouldn't talk you down from that. But yeah, I mean, it's going to take some time. I don't have their non-conference schedule off the top of my head. But I could see them going through some hardships in the non-conference, trying to get on the same page. And I mean, let's be honest, JJ, when we talk about things, the ACC has not been that great of a basketball conference over the last couple of seasons. I know you mentioned Wake Forest in the first segment, and like I've always said it throughout the course of a season, I won't believe in Wake Forest until they prove it. Yep. You look at 2 years ago when they had that upset victory over Duke in the court storming, and they were set up to make the NCAA tournament, and then they collapsed down the stretch. You look at last year, they have they're again one of those bubble teams. They don't really have that major signature victory that you need to try to get into the NCAA tournament, but they're hanging around, and then like a last season kind of collapse, losing a Florida State at home, and losing a Virginia at home, and losing at NC State. So like Wake Forest is a team that I'm not really going to believe it until I see it, even though they have some good moments throughout the course of a season. I think Miami is going to be better because obviously you can't get worse. You look at the new additions in Stanford and SMU and Cal. I don't know how good they're going to be. Florida State, what are they going to look like this year? Same thing goes for teams like Virginia and Notre Dame as well, and even Syracuse, who once was a power in the early days of joining the ACC, and they're not what they used to be anymore either. So you talked about Duke, you talked about Louisville, North Carolina. I still think you have to include in that upper echelon as well. But yes, there could be some growing pains for a team like NC State. But I think I don't want to say it like this, but once you get later in the season, I fear that NC State's not going to be a team you want to see in your schedule come February and into early March.
And I feel like Clemson is a team that we trust Brad Brownell with what he's been able to do.
Well, Clemson was, in my opinion, was very similar to a Wake Forest. And like, I wasn't going to believe in Clemson until I finally saw the production. And a couple of years ago with them breaking through and making that Elite Eight and falling just short to Alabama, it's like, okay, I've seen Clemson. Last year, I know they had a tough NCAA tournament, but still getting in. It's like, all right, I'll trust Clemson now. I think with Brad Brownell, they were always the team that couldn't get over the hump. And now that they finally did, you think that things are going to come a little bit easier for them down in Clemson.
Let me circle back to NC State. Let me give you this non-conference schedule that this group is going to go through with Will Wade in his first season. North Carolina Central to open up the year, UAB, UNC Greensboro, UNC Asheville, VCU, and then they've got the Maui Invite where they will play Seton Hall, Boise State, or USC, a couple of other opponents that would be determined depending on how the bracket falls. In the ACC-SEC Challenge, NC State plays a true road game at Auburn, who went to the Final Four this past season. They've got Liberty, Texas Southern. They'll play Ole Miss, coached by Chris Beard, in Greensboro, neutral site game there. And then NC State has signed a home-and-home agreement with Kansas. So the Jayhawks will come to Raleigh this season to play a home game. So some high-level competition on the schedule there for NC State. Those will be some big tests when you look at Auburn, when you look at Kansas, when you look at Ole Miss on the docket for the Wolfpack.
Yeah, I'm looking at when you read that schedule and like easy to start, right? You're going to get your feet wet, your new coach, whole new roster. You're going to be able to get a chance to mesh and work out some of the kinks. And even the Maui Invitational, when you look at the field as a whole, not a strong field this year as compared to other years. I know we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the Players Era Invitational in Las Vegas kind of becoming that dominant
for sure
multi-team event in the early season. So the Maui Invitational is not that strong. But talk about Kansas, talk about Ole Miss, talk about Auburn. Those are three supposed to be big-time games. So I think you're going to learn a lot about NC State heading into ACC play through those three games in late November into December.
No doubt. So we'll see what this looks like for NC State. I still think we're seeing Duke as the clear front runner. I think you and I are in agreement there with what we're looking at here.
100%. I think when the ACC Media Day polls come out for men's basketball, Duke, I would be stunned if Duke is not the preseason favorite. But Louisville, I think, is going to be a close second. I think kind of what we saw last year, Duke and Louisville was the ACC championship game. Pat Kelsey, what he did in his first season at Louisville was phenomenal, and I'm only expecting them to get better. I'm a big believer now in Louisville basketball.
And Kevin, state bragging rights mean something, right? I mean, in 2024, Duke football just beat Wake. They beat UNC. They beat NC State. We'll see if they can do that again this season. Same goes for basketball. Kind of had their number, and you want to make sure you can kind of stay on top of the state because, as we have seen year after year, North Carolina remains one of the best premier hoop states for top prospects in the country. And you want to be able to continue your Charlotte pipelines, guys in the Triangle area, and that sort of thing.
No, 100%. And I can even make the argument that I think the basketball bragging rights are more important than the football bragging
Undoubtedly,
rights.
While Duke's on the top of the football world, I wanted to make sure we put that in.
Yeah, 100%. That game on Monday night, it was whoa. Maybe, and myself included, I thought North Carolina maybe was going to be a little bit better than they were. But there's a lot of season left to be played. But going back to the basketball, it's kind of interesting, right? Because when you talk about state bragging rights, it feels like it's only like between Duke and North Carolina, right? When you look at Duke and their matchups, NC State and Wake Forest, sure, they're in-state competition and in-state rivals, but you don't have that like big rivalry with the two. Now you do with North Carolina and North Carolina State. Like they are heated rivals. But with Duke, at least in my opinion, it kind of only sways to the Tar Heels where it's like you want bragging rights over them.
Agreed.
And then with Wake Forest and NC State, it's like, hey, if we lose a game, like there's not going to be major bragging rights at stake like it is when Duke and North Carolina play at least twice per year.
Because they've just kind of been irrelevant, which is why the 2024 Elite Eight game still stings so much. Tip of the cap to NC State. You got that one on us. But not going to happen again. We'll try to keep this Duke train going. So Duke basketball feeling good right now. Big schedule put in place for John Shire's bunch. We'll step aside for a quick break, and then when we come back, we start to wrap up our conversation today here on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. The easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Game Time is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. The show is also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with the can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Right now, Illinois favored against Duke on Saturday by 2.5 points. Talking NFL on Thursday, we'll see the start of the season with the Cowboys and Eagles. The Eagles right now favored by 7.5 on FanDuel. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, here we go. Kevin Connelly once again with us from Ball Durham talking about Duke basketball. And Kevin, we're talking about a Duke basketball team that has now been able to fully finalize their non-conference schedule. As we're talking about separating yourself against your counterparts and your peers within the conference, Duke's going to be tested. Recently this week in the College Basketball John Rothstein podcast, John Shire was talking about how excited they are to have this schedule in front of them. But then Shire joked, maybe ask me once the season comes to a close how I'm feeling about it, depending on how things go for Duke, with a couple of losses that they might take along the way. We've got the schedule up on the screen for those watching us on YouTube.
Well, yeah, JJ. I think everyone's excited because, let's be honest, games against Texas and Kansas and Florida and Michigan State are a lot more exciting than games against Western Carolina and Niagara and Howard. Right. That's just the nature of the beast. Those games are a little bit of a snooze fest, and you're not going to gather much information out of games like that.
Yep.
But certainly there's a lot of them. And I think maybe diving into the deep end of the pool in the exhibitions with Central Florida, a Big 12 team, getting your feet wet before going to Knoxville to play Tennessee, that's a good way to get started. I'm going to be honest with you, JJ, of all these games on the non-conference schedule, Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, Florida, Michigan State, Texas Tech, and Michigan, I'm most excited for that November 11th matchup on Veterans Day on the road in West Point against Army. Yeah. I think that's just going to be an awesome atmosphere. I think it's going to be hostile. I think the gym is going to be full of cadets, and yes, Duke is going to have by far the premier talent, and they could easily end up winning the game by 40. But just the fact that, we've seen Army over several years come down to Cameron and play Duke on Veterans Day, but Duke going up to West Point to play Army on Veterans Day, I'm sure Mike Krzyzewski is going to be on the trip with them as a Army alum, and Duke playing in the gym where he used to play and be an assistant coach with Bobby Knight. I think that's just going to be an awesome game. And of all these major high-power games, I really think I'm looking forward to that November 11th date with Army the most.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a special one. We talked about it last week on the show with Raul Clement from the Devil's Den podcast. Duke's only played there once before, 9-0 all-time against Army, but only once have they played in West Point. And Kevin, that game took place back in 1997 and wasn't televised. There's not much footage of what it looks like to see Duke basketball playing in that venue. And so, to your point, this hasn't happened since 97. I can't wait to see all of this unfold and just the pageantry of it all with Duke going up against this program.
And especially because you could easily see, okay, Duke can sell out an arena. If you wanted to go to New York to play Army, you could try to get in the Barclays Center. You could try to get in Madison Square Garden. You could try to even play in New Jersey in the Prudential Center. But the fact that they're going to West Point to play this game, I think is exciting. And I think it's the most exciting game on the non-conference schedule, at least from a visual perspective of what I think the pageantry and everything, just that game being on Veterans Day is going to be like.
For sure. Beyond that, a game at home against Florida, the reigning national champs, they were in the Final Four with you. They're returning a whole lot of talent. I think that's huge. A true road game for Duke at Michigan State in the non-conference. And then Coach Shire talked about on the same podcast with John Rothstein, he's really looking forward to that game against Arkansas for the program to go up against Coach Cal on Thanksgiving Day, and it's in John Shire's hometown of Chicago.
You can't go wrong when talking about any one of these games.
We got a lot of choices.
We haven't even brought up the two Madison Square Garden dates, one against Kansas, the other against Texas Tech. And then we get another non-conference game in February in a neutral site in Washington, D.C. against a Michigan team that's supposed to be really good in the Big Ten as well. So I don't think you can really go wrong in picking what your favorite non-conference game is for this Duke team. Unless you're a Western Carolina alum or a Lipscomb alum, I don't think anyone's going to pick those games. But they're on the schedule too. But yeah, I don't think you can go wrong picking what game you're most excited for in the non-conference schedule for Duke.
And as we've joked on this show before, my dad, an everydayer, is a Western Carolina alum, so that's going to be special. But beyond that, people are looking forward to many more of those non-conference games because, to your point, Indiana State, Lipscomb, Niagara, Howard, Duke has never played them before. We've never seen them go up against each other in basketball. Played Western Carolina a couple of different times, and the scores haven't been too pretty for the Catamounts. They're out of Cullowhee. So all that great stuff. And, really excited for basketball season to be here before we know it. Kevin, tell us about Ball Durham and how people can support you.
Come read us every single day at balldurham.com. Obviously, getting into the heart of football season, going into week 2 here. Big matchup on Saturday against Illinois. We're always on top of everything Duke basketball. So come read us every single day over at balldurham.com. Summer's officially over, back into full swing, and we got so much great content for you up there every single day.
Great to see you, Kevin. We'll talk again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ. You too, man.
All right, Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Thanks for your support always, guys, with our show here. Be sure to follow us wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.